For more than 50 years, one experiment was taught in almost every psychology classroom on Earth as proof of a terrifying idea that ordinary people, given the smallest taste of power, will become monsters. It was called the Stanford Prison Experiment. It has been in textbooks, documentaries, and even government reports. But over the last few years, something has happened that rarely happens to a legend this big. Historians got access to the original archive, and what they found was not the story we were told. This is the story of a study that shaped how the world understood evil for half a century, and the investigation that is now quietly taking it apart. We'll look at four things: what actually happened in that basement in 1971, why the story became so powerful, what the archives reveal that the original report left out, and why the real lesson might not be about human nature at all. It might be about us, the audience. In August of 1971, a psychology professor named Philip Zimbardo ran a study in the basement of the Stanford University Psychology building. He and his team turned the corridor into a mock prison. They recruited about 70 young men through a newspaper ad, offering $15 a day to take part in a study of prison life. After screening for mental health, 24 of them were selected and randomly split into two groups. Half became prisoners, half became guards. The prisoners were arrested at their real homes, blindfolded, and brought to the fake prison. They were stripped, given numbers instead of names, and locked in small cells. The guards were given uniforms, mirrored sunglasses, and instructions to maintain order, but with very few specific rules on how. The study was supposed to run for 2 full weeks. It didn't. Within 36 hours, prisoner number 8612 broke down, screaming, crying, unable to continue. He was released. Over the next few days, guards escalated, prisoners were stripped, deprived of sleep, and humiliated in ways that went far beyond what anyone had expected. On day 6, a graduate student named Christina Maslach visited the basement to conduct interviews and was horrified by what she saw. She confronted Zimbardo directly. He ended the study that same day. "6 days, not 2 weeks. The story that came out of that basement was almost irresistible. It offered a simple, terrifying explanation for real horrors the world had just watched, including the abuse of prisoners of war, and decades later, images from Abu Ghraib that looked disturbingly similar to what happened at Stanford. The message was clean, quotable, and universal. It's not that some people are evil, it's that any of us could become the guard or the prisoner if you just change the situation. Zimbardo became one of the most famous psychologists alive. He testified before Congress. He wrote a best-selling book, The Lucifer Effect. The study appeared in nearly every introductory psychology textbook printed after the 1970s. For 50 years, almost nobody outside a small circle of researchers seriously challenged the core story, because the story was doing exactly what everyone needed it to do, explaining human cruelty in a single, memorable sentence. Starting in the 2010s, a French researcher named Thibault Le Texier got access to the original Stanford archives. Boxes of tapes, notes, and transcripts that had never been fully reviewed by outsiders. What he found, published in the American Psychologist Journal in 2019, was very different from the official version. First, the guards were not simply left to behave however they wanted. The night before the study began, Zimbardo's team held a briefing and told the guards, in his own recorded words, that they could, quote, create a sense of fear and make make prisoners feel powerless. That's not a neutral setup, that's direction. Second, one of the most infamous guards, Dave Eshelman, later nicknamed John Wayne for his cruelty, has openly said in interviews that he was essentially performing a role, drawing on his background in theater, and that he deliberately tried to invent new, more extreme ways to control the prisoners, because he thought that's what the researchers wanted to see. Third, prisoner number 8612. The man whose breakdown became one of the most famous moments in psychology, said years later, in a recorded interview, that his breakdown was largely an act. He said he faked it because he was told he couldn't simply quit the study, and it was the only way he saw to be released. He needed to study for an exam. Fourth, the guards weren't treated as subjects being observed. They were treated more like employees being managed toward a result, with Zimbardo himself acting not as a neutral scientist, but as the prison's superintendent, a role he later admitted he became too absorbed in. None of this means nothing happened in that basement. Real people were humiliated. Real distress was recorded on tape. But the clean story, ordinary people with no instructions, spontaneously turning cruel, does not match what the archive shows. And there's a second experiment worth mentioning. In 2002, psychologists Alex Haslam and Steven Reicher ran a similar, but far more controlled study for the BBC. This time, the researchers gave no instructions to the guards at all. The result was almost the opposite of Stanford. Guards mostly failed to assert authority, and it was the prisoners who eventually organized. Same setup, very different outcome, which suggests the original result may have had less to do with human nature and more to do with what the experimenters, deliberately or not, pushed their subjects toward. So what actually happened in that Stanford basement in 1971? Something real. Young men really were humiliated, really did suffer, and at least some guards really did enjoy the power they were given. But the version that became a global legend, a clean, simple demonstration that any ordinary person will turn into a monster the moment you hand them a uniform, appears to have been shaped, coached, and simplified far more than most textbooks ever admitted. For 50 years, millions of students were taught a certainty that the evidence never actually supported. And maybe that's the real story here, not that human nature is dark. It's that a good enough story, told with enough confidence, at the right moment in history, can outrun the evidence for half a century before anyone thinks to check the tapes. The most dangerous thing was never the prison in that basement. It's how easily a story can become a fact, simply because everyone agreed to believe it.